Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Success in Africa Leadership Podcast. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership with a particular focus on leadership in Africa. I have been studying this for 3 decades now, and in this podcast, we share insights, stories, and lessons that you can learn from others who have been successful right here in Africa. Now, normally I tell the story of other people, but from time to time, I have the distinct honor of actually having one of those successful people live right in front of us so that you can hear it from the proverbial horse's mouth. And today and over the next 2 or 3 episodes, I'm so excited that we have one such person with us. His name is Dr. Martin Odour-Otieno, and he hails from Kenya. Now, before I welcome him, let me just share with you a few highlights of his career. Not only has he been the managing director of KCB Bank, which during his tenure was one of the fastest growing banks in Kenya. He has also been chair of several blue chip companies in Kenya, including East Africa Breweries and also Kenya. He has also been on the board of Kenya Airways. He has also served in public sector, and we're going to ask him a bit about this. So, without further ado, I'm going to welcome him to this podcast. Dr. Martin, it is a pleasure to have you on the Success in Africa Leadership Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Modupe, and I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this on this program, and looking forward to our conversation this afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, for those of you who are new to this conversation, I just invite you to like and subscribe to the podcast so that you can get notifications as we carry on. Let's jump right into it. You know, Dr. Martin, I shared a bit about your highlights, but I'd like to start with where it all started when you were not the famous person or the success that we know today. Tell us a bit about your formative years. You know, what incidents or experiences in those years kind of shaped who you are today?
Thanks, Modupe. More recently, I've been, seeing this characteristic of the fruit and the roots of a tree. And just coming back to what you're saying, which is, people see the fruits today of all these years that I've served in public and private sector. The root of this is actually, as you mentioned, I'm born and bred in Kenya. I hail from the western part of Kenya, closer to the Ugandan border. And I was brought up very much in the village. I'm a village boy. I only came to Nairobi when I came to university years later. But I grew up in the village doing what in those days village boys and girls did. My father was a primary school teacher. My mother was a housewife. She looked after the family. And so my beginnings were very much in that environment of a father who went out to school to teach and a mother who stayed at home and looked after her children. And we were a large family. I think that in her life, my mom must have had something close to 20 children, more, and she lost half of them at different stages. So in later periods, because I ended up being the firstborn by default, but I was never really the firstborn. I was firstborn because, the children above me, before me, died. I remember one or two of them are immediate, the ones that I followed immediately. and then one or two after me. And so I then inherited the mantle of a firstborn, took care of my younger siblings, and went to primary school in the village, and then later on, at probably age 11 or 12, I went to boarding school. And so from there on, I was in boarding school until I finished university. So those were my formative years at Modupe. Uh, a very disciplinarian parent, so part of my traits today around discipline, including timekeeping, basic things like keeping time, uh, cleanliness, dressing smartly, etc. Those are traits that I pick up from my father as a primary school and a disciplinarian at the time. Hard work, leadership coming from just taking care of my siblings. I do remember Modupe at some point earlier during the period, maybe I was in secondary school then. My father was involved in an accident. He was in a public transport vehicle which rolled. And so when we got the news, it was almost like the guy was going to die, out of that. And my mother, as she went off to hospital to see him, said to me, "Martin, you are now in charge of all these siblings of yours. Take care of them. I don't know when I'm going to come back, but you are now in charge of all of them." And I think some of these traits of leadership, Modupe, that you ask about, then are formed from some of those experiences earlier on. And then, like many people in life, as I went to primary school, I was a prefect, looking after some aspects of the students, of the pupils. And so I would say, in summary, that is where some of this come from, Modupe.
That's amazing. So you were put in charge at an early age. Now, where did you learn some of the leadership principles that informed how you led at that time? Because for some people, being in charge means, well, I'm the boss and everybody gets to, serve me. And for some people, it's being in charge is actually I serve others. Where did you learn about being in charge, and what were some of those key precepts that you learned either by observing as a child that informed how you took charge when you became a teenager?
That's short story that I've narrated there, Modupe. I think, my mother telling me, Martin, look after these children until I come back. And then my sister, the one who follows me, she has since passed on, but God rest her soul in peace. So she was quite troublesome. So as I put them down, when my mother walked out or went out of the gate, and I said, "Now, guys, we've got to behave. Our father's been in this accident. We don't know when they are coming back. Now I'm in charge." And she said, "No, no, no, no. You are not in charge. And so I had a bit of a tiff with her at that point, and it just I began to kind of in later reflection, thinking that leadership is never an easy thing because we are leading people. But even at that very early age, my own siblings, small girls, are trying to say, no, you cannot actually be in charge of us. You are not, right? And those kind of things repeat themselves. But a straight answer to you is, I saw it in our home. I saw my father as a teacher, and how he led the teachers. I saw how he led our family. We were part of a clan which liked celebration, and periodically, a couple of times a year, all the clan elders would come into our home, and there would be feasting. There would be traditional brew. There would be feasting on sort of meat and etc. But I saw the order. I saw them sitting down nicely. Um, Women usually sat on the ground, but the men sat on chairs. The women sat just below them. The children were sent to do things, but there was order in which that whole experience happened. And the elder person in the room would normally give instructions around, and people would listen to them, right? And so as I was growing up, I was picking up these tips of leadership from from wherever I interacted as a child, looking at the elders, looking at my own parents, looking at other people in the village, being sent to do things, and the expectation of those that were around me. So all that, I think, have helped shape who I've become in later life, Modupe.
Thank you so much, Martin. And I'm curious because, and I would like to drill down a little bit into your, shall we say, semi-rebellious sisters. How did you win them over? From the time that they said, nope, you're not in charge of us, how did you manage to win them over to, shall we say, agree to be led by you?
I think partly, I sat down obviously with them, and as the oldest person in around their child, though I was, what I didn't tell you also, Modupe, is that I grew. I've got a very strong place for spirituality. My parents were Catholic. They took us to church every day, every week, every Sunday, and so we grew up in this church environment where also I saw leadership, and so and I saw kind of um, reverence for another power from above. And so when this accident happened and my mother left and left me with these two children, I remember the first thing I did with them. I said, now, brothers and sisters, I don't remember exactly if I used those words, but I say to them, let's sit down and let us pray. Let us pray for our father that he may heal, right? Because we don't know at the moment. And we said a little prayer, right? And I think that helps soften even the rebellion once we say that prayer. And then, of course, I said to them, guys, now we're here. It was late in the afternoon. It must have been kind of like 5 o'clock, going 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, night is coming. We'll need food. We'll need to eat. Let's now begin, share some responsibilities here. Let's decide who is going to do what because we're just among ourselves here, right? And so, because of some of those activities late in the evening, I think I was able to calm them down, shared responsibilities around who was going to light the fire, who was going to light the lamps, etc. So that is how this whole process then turned out, Modupe.
Fantastic. Wow. So I'm already getting some nuggets of wisdom about leadership from you. One, you influence them by exercising spiritual leadership. And they also, seeing that you were willing to subjugate yourself to a higher power, were then influenced to willingly accept your instructions and your suggestions. That's amazing. All right. Now, just out of curiosity, how did your father pull through from that accident?
So, my father pulled through. He was in hospital for about, I think, 2 weeks or so. He had broken a collarbone and he had a few other fractures, but he was released from hospital after about 2 weeks. So he came home, and so kind of the rest is history.
Praise God for
Thank you.
that. Now, you mentioned that you were in boarding school all the way through to university. How did your education influence your success?
Well, I mean, obviously, education is the key to life, Modupe. I think, and again, I'm very grateful to my parents for having laid that foundation. I think him having been a teacher, he really wanted the best for his children, and that the vehicle for that was going to be education, and so he took education quite seriously. And I did go to boarding school kind of by default because I was in a day school in the city of Kisumu in Kenya. And, what happened serendipitously at that time was that um, there were what I would call a Catholic congregation of the Xaverian brothers who are running a school, a juniorate, where they trained people to be Catholic brothers. So this is kind of support to the missionaries, and this were a teaching congregation, a teaching brotherhood. So they came to our day school and they kind of said, who would like to come and join our brotherhood? And being kind of the curious boy I was, I raised up my hand. And they said, okay, we'll come back next week and we'll take you through some interviews and in the meantime, let your parents know that this is happening. And one thing led to another, and I went into this boarding school in in primary school, primary six, um, and so I took to it and focused very much on that. My journey didn't lead to joining the congregation, but they gave me a grounding in education, in discipline, in hard work, in spirituality as well. And so, when I finished that level, I went to the second school level in the same neighborhood. And then, I went to my high school, again, still within the Western Kenya region. And as I mentioned, um, I only came to Nairobi when I came to university. Now, I must say that these three schools were largely run by the religious people. And I think
Mm.
because of that, and the discipline involved in that, that all kind of worked itself into me, and some of the virtues that I then have come to live through in later life was formed in that stage. So some of the leadership elements there, being selected to be a prefect here, joining some of the clubs in schools and so on, exercising leadership of one form or another. Um, I'm 6'1". I'm slightly shorter than you, Modupe. I'm 6'1", and so I played volleyball, and was a captain and played up to some of the national levels of volleyball. So, taking advantage of my kind of physical or physique, and so all these things, I think, at some point add up to who you become in later life, Modupe.
What did you learn from being in a sports team about leadership that has informed how you lead today?
That's a really good question, Modupe, because what comes, foremost in my mind is teamwork. What comes to mind first is teamwork. The fact that in a volleyball team, you probably have a team of 6 or 9 people, depending on what game you're playing, what model you're playing, and everybody is kind of playing a role here. So I'm at the back, I'm serving this ball, it's brought back, somebody's holding it, passing on to the guys who then kind of hit it onto the other side, and you are moving and watching what's happening here. Uh, and there's a captain in the team, and you are looking at the captain and seeing what kind of instructions are coming from the captain. And on the outside, there's some kind of a coach as well who is shouting instructions at yourself. And I see leadership in this. I see in this volleyball team. I was never good in football, but certainly in volleyball, I can just see what was happening at that time. And in hindsight, the roles that were being played by people, the fact that they had to pull together to win, the celebration when they won, and the gloom when they lost this game, and going out and saying, but that's not the end of the world. Actually, we have other games lined up. So let's see what we can do better. The training and the practice over and over again, because you get better with practice. So I think those are some of the things that I learned from the sporting world, and that very much applicable to leadership, Modupe.
Amazing, amazing. I've gained so much already from this first part of our interview. Let me just recap some of the things that I've gleaned. Number one, the importance of discipline and hard work, which your father taught you and you also got from the schools and your school teachers. Number two, the importance of spiritual leadership and leaning on a higher power and letting your followers know that you lean on that higher power. Number three, the importance of teamwork, recognizing that people with different roles, different skills can come together to work together, recognizing that they win together or they lose together. And one loss does not mean that the entire season is lost, but you can learn together. And lastly, practice makes perfect. Amazing. All right, we're now at the end of the first part of the episode, and in the second episode of this three-part series, we're going to ask Martin a little bit more about his professional life. So, for those of you listening, watching, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends about it. This is brought to you by BCA Online, which is a one-stop shop for mastering leadership. Joining it is free, and we want you to be a success in Africa. So join us.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.